Welcome to Study Loop.
So if we consider each of the cubic lattices listed in the previous problem, I have them written out here: simple cubic, body-centered, and face-centered, along with a screenshot from the book giving an easy depiction of each. We can think about the coordination number, the length of the edge of the cell in terms of the radius of the atoms that make it up, and the number of atoms that each cell holds. So first, let's consider coordination number. So within the simple cubic cell, let's consider this atom first. I'll draw a 0 around it there. And the coordination number refers to the number of atoms that are in immediate proximity to an atom of interest. So in this case, I've drawn this, let's make this a little bit easier to see, drawn this red circle here on this atom of interest. And if we consider the atoms within this cubic cell that are touching it, there's 1, 2, 3. And if we consider the fact that this unit cell is also going to be accompanied by other unit cells nearby, so the same way that we have this, there's going to be another cube here, and so forth, there's going to be a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth around this unit cell, basically making up the individual directions of this cell. So in total, the coordination number for this type of cell is going to be 6. Next, for the body-centered cell, if we consider just this yellow atom in the center, it's a little bit easier to see that the coordination number around this is going to be 8, because the coordination number, or the number of atoms immediately touching the one in the center, are the ones that make up the corners of this cell. The face-centered lattice is a little bit more difficult to think about, but not too bad. So if we take a look at this yellow atom in the top face of this face-centered cell, it's got 4 atoms immediately surrounding it on this level. It's going to have another 4 around this level. And if we imagine another level above it, there's going to be another 4. So that's why the coordination number for a face-centered cubic cell is 12. So now if we consider the edge lengths for each of these cells, the simple cubic cell is a very straightforward cell because all the atoms, as they're shown here in the picture, are touching each other. And the cubic cell technically extends from the center of each of these atoms. So the corner of this cubic cell is actually within the center of each of the atoms drawn here. And what that means is, since we have these atoms touching each other, that if we put a corner inside one of these cells and then a corner in another neighboring cell and draw a line between them, the distance of that line is going to be 2 times the radius of those atoms. That one's a lot more straightforward. So through some algebra that I'm not going to get into here, the edge lengths of the other 2 types of cells are 4r over the square root of 3 and 2 times the square root of 2r. Now you can get these answers if you go through, and the book has a much better explanation about why those are the cases, but for the purposes of this, we're just going to write out what the answers are. And then finally, if we consider the number of atoms per cell, if we look first at the simple cubic cell, again, we have an atom on each corner, but only 1/8 of each of those atoms actually exists within inside the unit cell itself. So if we have 8 atoms, but only 1/8 of each of them is inside the cell, there's 1 atom per cell. That's going to be true for all of the atoms on the corners of any of your cells. So each of those atoms is really only going to make up 1 atom within this cell. So if we look at the body-centered, same way we had with the simple cubic, we've got atoms on each of the corners, which means that they're going to represent in total 1 atom net once we do the math that we have for the simple cubic. But then there's also an atom in the center of this cell. It's a body-centered, it's completely within the cell, which means that the number of atoms per cell in a body-centered cell is 2. And finally, if we consider the face-centered cell, we still have atoms on all of our corners, so we have that 1 tacked there. But we also have 6 atoms making up, sitting on these faces. And because they sit on the faces, half of them are going to be within the unit cell itself, for a total of 3, which is why the net number of atoms per unit cell on a face-centered cubic cell is 4.